Absolutely. Hey, and before you go forward, I have a question for you. And I don't know how to pronounce it, but the Vipassana, is that the word, Vipassana?
Vipassana.
Vipassana.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Pasana in Pali would be Vipassana. I'm not particularly a scholar of these Indian languages either, but the Thai, I know how the Thai people, they say Vipassana.
Let me do that. Let me, because I could do that better. Because I have to ask you a question about Vipassana for my English.
Yeah.
My question is, I just know the word to be associating with breathing. And I know it's not just simple breathing. I know it's a whole practice and it's a whole yoga into itself. But my question is, because then after that, you mentioned Theravada Buddhism, which I only superficially. Theravada. Again, thank you.
Not Veda, Theravada. The Vedas are something else. The Vada is a path.
True, Vada. Okay, what he said. I understand that to be the most basic teachings of Buddhism, like the purest teachings of Buddha himself. So my question is Vipassana, or however you pronounce it, is that part of the Buddhist teachings, the Theravada teachings?
I would say that the things you like so much about Buddhism, like Zen and Dzogchen, they are indeed a form of Vipassana.
Interesting.
Except
so it's not just breathing. You answered my question.
No, the mindfulness of breathing is technically called anapanasati. So the sati is the mindfulness, or smriti in Sanskrit, the mindfulness of in and out breathing. Anapanasati. So the out breath and the in breath.
Yes.
The mindfulness of the out breath and the in breath, and that's just one method of Vipassana. Vipassana covers all bases. Vipassana covers all consciousnesses, all 6 consciousnesses and the mind consciousness and beyond, and applies the Buddhist view on them. And one of the methods to practice that Vipassana is anapanasati, so the mindfulness of breathing. Okay. But you can also, but from their point of view, Dzogchen would be a form of Vipassana.
Very good. Okay. So you.
Or Zen is a form of Vipassana, except that you might want to say that Dzogchen and Zen are based on the view of Mahayana, meaning that the motivation is to reach enlightenment, not just to liberate yourself, but to help free all beings from the start. So even from the start, you're motivated by recognizing the truth in order to liberate all beings.
I resonate with that. Yes.
Whereas in Vipassana, that's not necessary. You can just practice Vipassana for yourself, to liberate yourself, and then forget about everybody. However, in the Theravada, they would say that you're not really capable of being a bodhisattva or liberating until you're at the very brink of recognizing emptiness, because before that, you cannot really know what you're promising. Because
I get it.
The bodhisattva promises not to give up on all beings until everybody's liberated. And the Theravadians would say, yeah, that's good, but wait until you're at that point where you actually know what you're talking about when you make that promise.
I love it. That's more accurate. I actually like that better. I love it. I like that better, actually. Yeah.
So there are bodhisattvas in the Theravada tradition, but they are more rare. They would say, this isn't something an ordinary being can just decide on. It's something that arises spontaneously in a very highly developed mind.
Wow.
Okay.
I got to tell you, wait, we just got to circle. We got to stay on that, because it may have been even a conversation with you, probably with you, because I can't think of too many people I've had that conversation. I've said that before, that I used to laugh at the bodhisattva vow and the shoe past it, I'm beyond vows, I don't like any vows. And it was only this year or last year, but 2 years ago, when I wrote that book, that I realized, I was like, this is the bodhisattva path. Like what you just said, this is the bodhisattva path. And the bodhisattva path is built into the realization itself, because it's the relationship of self and other. You realize there's no self without other. You realize there's no one to rescue, and that self and other is the self. But it's interesting because you say that, because I used to laugh at any vows and say, I don't like vows and bodhisattva. I would skip past that. It was only this last couple of years, and I realized, wow, now I get the same thing as I said yesterday in the talk. When I hear Christian stuff, I'm like, oh my God, now I know what the Christians are talking about. The same thing with the Bodhisattva vow. It only came to me later. I was like, now I know what they're talking about. The true Bodhisattva vow is not the Bodhisattva vow. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So the Bodhisattva, all these Tibetan Buddhists from the West, right, who think they can just take the Bodhisattva vow, that's good. It's a very pious exercise.
I didn't. I never did. I was into the Trevor. I was selfish. I just wanted
if they realized what they were getting into,
yeah.
they probably wouldn't do so. So it's a little bit like kids playing with Matchbox cars instead of really going Formula One. Okay. So the real Bodhisattva is going Formula One, and all these enthusiastic Buddhists, they are most of them are like children playing Bodhisattva because they don't know what they're talking about when they say, I'm going to be a Bodhisattva. Okay, but that's just still, it's a good thing that they make this vow formally.
No, I agree. Yep.
I'm not making any judgment on that because I'm very careful with these vows.
No, and pardon me, just me interrupt for 1 second. I think you would agree with me. You know infinitely more about Buddhism, but what I always say about Buddhism is that Buddhism is a huge word. It encompasses so much, and whatever you know about Buddhism, and I don't mean you, but most of us, definitely me, is only the tiniest fraction of Buddhism. And if you're reading Buddhism and you're talking about Buddhism, all you're doing is projecting your tiny awareness of Buddhism onto all of Buddhism. And I'm guilty of that. I look at everyone
and plus, everything you just said is true. Plus, I would say that even Buddhism itself is only the tiniest fraction of what René Guénon would call the tradition, which is just the metaphysical truth, which is just an ocean of reality. And whatever a human being can filter from that into a particular tradition can only be a split, like a little fraction that helps locally to a certain culture. And so this truth is so vast that it's just ridiculous for a human being to think that he could hold it in a system.
Yeah.
Right?
And I know that from experience, because I know when I hear Christianity, when I hear Taoism, when I hear metaphysics and weird stuff that doesn't even have a name, I feel a deep resonance. Like, I don't know, like, let's say, what's the deep one? Like, what do they say? As above, so below. Like, I don't even know where that comes from, but I get it intuitively. It's everything, it's this thing.
Yeah.
It's everything. So I don't even know where that comes from, but every bit of wisdom I hear, I feel like I've been there. It's like a physical place. I've been there, and I know you've been there by the language that you use.
And that's what they mean by dharma, like what is falsely translated as Buddhism. Dharma, or Che in Tibetan, means that metaphysical truth. It's that which you can, that the enlightened information you can rely on, and the fact that anywhere you poke into that truth, you will find that anything else that pokes into the truth will be reminiscent, will sound reminiscent to you.
Yes.
Because they're just poking at the same truth. Hopefully, insofar as they are true, they are poking at the same jewel from different sides. And so.
But also, I see it in science. I know nothing about science, but my superficial view of science, I see it there too. And probably if I were to study history, like, you could see it. But anyway, we're off track. Go ahead. I asked you about.
We're never off track. We are the track.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that.
That's just the nature of our discussions. We can't, we can't do this, and we shouldn't do this as if we are in a university lecture. Exactly. Although I will try to be as systematic as possible. Yeah. So that we don't lose, because with every 10 minutes of small talk, we lose half the listeners. So yeah, I'm trying to get through this thing here today, or maybe at least part of it. Maybe we can continue later. So for me, the decisive issue here is what you talked about the other day on your video about your own state of mind. And me being curious about what that state of mind is and what it amounts to in that Vipassana system. Maybe the last thing on the Vipassana thing is, and that's connected to what you said about yourself, and why I want to read this is that the Vipassana teachers, they would say, regardless of what tradition you are in, if it leads to liberation, such as Zen or Dzogchen, or you're practicing contemplation according to Saint John of the Cross.
Mm-hmm.
The Vipassana people are pretty scientific about it. They say, we don't care what kind of tradition you are in, but if you want to reach liberation, you will still have to undergo the same stages of insight that we are describing here. So regardless of what tradition you're in, if it's Dzogchen or Zen, more poetic like Zen, or more rock and roll, or more Christian sentimental, regardless, if it leads to liberation, necessarily these stages mentioned here will have to be found there. And that's why I was interested in talking to you about, you're talking about yourself, because I thought I recognized some of them there.
Yes.
And we're the way you mispronounce Vipassana, it's obvious that you've never really dealt with that system before, and that makes it all the more interesting, because you're not mimicking something you've read about Vipassana, because obviously you've never dealt with the Vipassana system. So that makes the Vipassana system here of more pertinence than, say, Dzogchen or Zen, all of which you have read on.
And I've already found resonation with what they just said, that it should necessarily follow from this to this. I agree. I don't even know what it is, but I do agree that all the steps that, I've put out, everything I've outlined, it necessarily follows from something.
Yeah, because it's in the nature of things.
Yes, exactly.
That's exactly what they mean by dharma, by dharma.
You can't help it by the nature of it, the very nature of it.
It's just the way things are. So it doesn't really matter if you're a Buddhist or what.